Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run it and remind myself what on earth I'm doing, because I kind of got to the end of last time. Oh yeah, so what was I thinking? GUI improvements. You can tell I've been playing with it. I have cut my resolution to actually what I see is a bit too kind of big for the... I've cut my resolution in the hope that FFmpeg deals with it better. Q inputs. Anyhow, at the moment I'm fairly pleased. I am wanting to, I think, make changes to the GUI. It is now, at this resolution, it's kind of packed in a bit much, but hey ho. Make changes to the GUI. And actually a bunch of other things, and I need to start making a list of what those things are. I'm going to leave this running just now and remind myself a little bit, because this is the bit where it's an awful lot of fun to play with. It'll render animations. I have to resist the urge to just render a lot of animations, because actually it could be made a lot more fun and useful with a bit more attention. Just looking at it, one thing I see is the gradient button. It's never been completed, so I'm going to start thinking about my list here. So I do have these things to still think about. In the recursor itself, hide hotkey option, improve gradient set edit box. The hide hotkey option, maybe I should just do that now. I do want some kind of button on screen, because it kind of makes... I sort of think it'd be nicer to be able to toggle all the guides and have a key that does the opposite. So why don't I just do that just now? A problem that I'm now facing though is I'm running out of space, and it has options that I didn't initially imagine it having, and they're in here when I didn't initially imagine it. So I have to think about reducing things. Snapping takes up a lot of space for some things that aren't used much, and it could be compressed down and something like the video options could be made. Or, yeah. Similarly with output, actually all of these things could, in theory, be compressed down into a box like this. That is a load of work. And where am I even really thinking about this guides button being? Think, man, think. Well, one thing I can do is I can just take away these little gaps. These headings are pretty bulky as well. Think, think, think. Let's just... See, I won't consider this to be done now until there's a hide hotkey and an option, so I'm going to have to stick one in somewhere. And it is one that should be here, in a sense. It doesn't relate to anything so much as like this stuff. How could I reduce down snapping and reduce down snapping. It's really difficult to think of things like this. I suppose what I'm thinking most about is how is this actually used? And I guess that what it is mainly people will be using grid. I find myself using grid most often. If I could reduce it to a button which actually described what the snapping situation was, grid, length, angle, all on or off, and you click the button and you got an options box to change them, that would be fine. I think it would be fine. Actually being able to switch them on and off right here is okay. In fact, I quite like it if there was a way to make it more compressed, which actually there is. There is, because this is on off, but I do have icons. I'll come on to those shortly. And I think that I could switch them for tick cross icons. That makes sense. How could I reduce down the size of these buttons? These could be just made a little bit smaller. These, I suppose, could be reduced down a bit, but then where it's not like I get a bunch of extra space by reducing these down and making these a bit smaller. I end up with a little column here. Not useful for very much. And there's 3 of these. What becomes useful is if I can pack a pair onto one line, but even then it's an odd number, so I end up taking up 2 lines with a gap, unless I can dream up some other form of snapping, and that should not be the goal. So, without putting them inside a box, having them all here, well, actually, yeah, it could be reduced down to 2. If I arranged them vertically, but nah, still not really. It wouldn't be so, like, well, it could be, because I could say grid, grid, and a tick or a cross. Length would only just pack in, it's not great. And should I really be thinking about it in those terms? I've avoided having menu sets because I haven't felt like I'm going to have enough options to justify menus, but then I see them beginning to expand and I think, arg. 8 minutes of just procrastinating about it. Well, I am thinking about it, like I'm trying to, and this, I mean, it just needs to change as well. It needs, something different needs to appear when I click this. I think about these things and I think, God, this is quite a hassle, but that's the way it is. How's this bearing up? Q inputs only, that's okay. I feel like this is an okay sort of arrangement. The only way to reduce these things, I think, is to start using icons. This add before, add after is a bit goofy, you know. This is the selected point, add before, should add one here, I think, yeah. And add after would add one in there now. And it is a bit goofy. I kind of like it that way, it's very specific. But I think basically I'm going to keep it. I could pack remove before and after onto one line. This is a big bit of wasted space, isn't it? The headings really are a big bit of wasted space. If I could use that space, I could probably do something with it, except it is like a little bit of extra space. You know, what on earth am I going to pack in there? Unless I get used to the idea of sort of, and even then it doesn't really make it clear that, well, it does sort of, I suppose. I don't like that idea, but even so, this is wasted, I agree. I think it's starting to look more and more valuable. How do I can just pack up smaller headings. How small can I get away with in a heading? What I miss are panels with tiny little headings written in them and a little thin line. There's no reason I couldn't make one of those, but then, you know, which is the least faff, is my thinking. We have a quick look at what title bar is like. XY width height. Yeah, it'll try and make it. What actual height am I setting them to? Recursor, GUI, setup, title. Yeah, I'm just saying button height. So I think I'll make a different thing here, which is local t height, which will be a float, and it will equal button height times 0.7. And these will be t heights. And where's my other titles? Here. What on earth did I just make t height this? Oh, go away. This goes there. Point title goes there. Output title goes there. There's another one, I know it here. Now it doesn't save me much, and I should run it and look at it, because it might just have made them far, far too squished. What is this for? Oh. Yeah, I might just have made them too small. And honestly, what am I saving? And actually, you know what? Stop a second. There is something else I can do, as a matter of fact. Well, one thing is... Oh, I didn't manage to stop it in time. Those look okay at that size. And I feel like I have gotten more space. This has been moved to the wrong position because I'm skipping a thing, but never mind. Okay. Well, one other thing I can do is I can get back up here and I can see anytime I'm saying border times 2, I don't want border times 2. That should be 0.0. Is border times 2? No. Should be 2.0 as well. Border times 2? No. And down here, oops, have I missed a border times 2? Segment style menu. Oh yeah, okay, I see what I'm doing again. Down here, this should be minus title height to move it up to the top of title. And then it should just be, yeah, I guess that's okay. Okay, let me think for a sec. Because there is, let me see how much I've gained by doing that, because there is another thing I can do. These are all actually GUI, just GUI tweaks which I have been meaning to do, and they're coming in the wrong order, but it's because I've been forced to think about the amount of space I have here. A thing I'd like to do is replace the GUI font I'm using. I'm just using a bitmap font, which I'm quite happy to do. This, I guess, looks better. I guess it does. I might have to start it slightly smaller. That bit is in the right position now. So yeah, the other thing I can do to gain more space is I can go to GUI classes. I can look at these things that I define. Border being 2 times size. One thing is if I open up my fairly horrible GUI skins and find sharp skin, see this border size is 2 and I make that 1. And because I didn't code this very well, I also have to make it 1 here. This will be coded better at some point in the next year or so. And then I run it again to get an idea of just what I've done. This is basically giving me, yeah, more space on every single gadget. So I can shrink them, I can make them smaller. They don't need quite as much space. I don't have to shrink the font. It makes the font look kind of bulky now. Don't know if there's much I can do about that, except getting a better bitmap font, which, like I say, is a thing I kind of plan to do. It does make the font look bulky. The font looks too fuzzy compared to the cleanness of those lines now, but so replacing the font is an important thing, and I wonder if my plan for replacing the font will actually be enough to counteract that fuzziness. I will maybe just soon see, because actually seeing what's going on, I think that's the way forward. But line height equals 20 times size. I could just shrink the size of everything by shrinking that. But actually, there's a slightly better way, which is just to decrease line height slightly and say that font proportion is a little bit bigger. Let's say that line height actually is going to be 18 and font proportion is going to be 0.8. So this will make kind of every gadget smaller. Everything comes from line height, more or less. There are some little bits and pieces that don't. Yeah, and the font still fits in. I notice that some of these lines have disappeared. That's really annoying. And it's just it's a problem with having single thickness borders on gadgets. Sometimes they fall in such a way that they don't bloody appear at all. That border looks bulky now, and then this load thing, it sort of works. Misses all those underlines though, that, and misses that. Man, I'd forgotten that that was such a downside to having the single, and the border does look too bulky. Actually, that's a window border thing, but anyway. Okay, well, on the other hand, maybe I will learn to live with it because of the extra space. Look, all those look bad now. They just look bad. And I don't know how to guarantee it. taking an integer of something somewhere. Skins didn't go away just now. These are all floats. What happens if I make them integers? I really don't think it's good news if I do. I just don't think it is. This is a bit of a problem in a way. Let me have another look at it and see what I think. I think it doesn't look good. I think it really doesn't. And I just think it comes down to the luck of the positioning of the gadgets. Like, that line somehow falls in a position that I think is actually Direct 3D just doesn't see it. And it makes it look pretty kind of janky. If they were all there, I would live with it this moment. They are not all there. What can I do to make that better? Well, when I think about the way this draws, it takes an extraordinary number of bloody triangles to draw a simple thing like that. And actually I could, well, no, I can't really reduce down the number of triangles, not very well. I have attempted to, and reducing the triangles is okay, but it can mean increasing the pixel fill, and for large gadgets that can be an awful lot of pixels. Can I even figure out? Yeah. X2 is x plus border size, x4, so x and x4. So x and y and x4, y4 are the outside, x2, y2 and y3, x3, y3 are the inside of this picture frame shape thing, which is the little 3D thing. I always love guessing. Is this sharp skin in? It's not really what I wanted to do the guess. I want to do the guess here because sharp skin out is what far and away than most of them are. And also I don't think I really want to draw them solid, because sometimes they in fact, what? Opaque? Yeah. Sometimes they have, sometimes I draw gadgets with alpha values, I think. In fact, I definitely do. And in fact, this is going to spoil some of my things, and it doesn't work out, so forget it. Alpha. Well, I suppose I could say 1.1. I'll just change it in one of them. If ever it seems to work, then yeah, I'll change it in both. Occasionally that's going to end up with fat little lines, though, I think. I don't know. Still didn't bring them up. And look, it's been enough to increase the size of these top ones and do nothing to these. Not even I can. That is really, really quite annoying. Like, how far do I have to go? Having a number like this is kind of just no use as well. It means everything on the screen gets wobbly. Yeah, great. That's great. I finally get a pixel on the bottom and I get 2 pixels on top of everything else. Almost everything else. 1 pixel on the bottom of here, 1 pixel on the top of here, 2 pixels here, 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 everywhere else. Well, but then now, honestly, when I sit and look at it, the proportions are about as good as I can imagine them getting. I feel quite kind of annoyed about that. And look, it still doesn't work. But it still don't. Oh, it still works on some. Certain pixels it'll appear, and it still doesn't work. And I am really like baffled by this. Oh, there it goes. Okay. I was going to say I'm baffled by why I'm not getting it there and here. Well, it's 2 places I'm not getting it. Or there, a bunch of them. But it's not to do with the button, that's the main thing. Anyway. Phew. When I look at it, it's really annoying the way it looks. But it's still probably the best proportions. There's a little gap there. I think that's because the border size is 2. It's kind of the best proportions, is it? My eyeballs can't tell anymore. The lettering looks slightly large for the buttons now. I suppose I could just stick it back to 2. 2 is at least consistent. I can stick it back to 2 and just leave this value at 18. Leave the font proportion at 0.8. That's really pushing it. I think it has to be 0.75, which is going to make it small with the line height being 17. I think I need to get a new font in the GUI. That's a bit of a pain. At least to see if it helps. You know, I don't mind the way that looks, but I kind of like the way it looks actually. And I'm definitely keeping that. I mean, for now, I'd forgotten. Like, look, those 2 are single pixels. It's just, you just don't notice it as much. At this position, those things end up being single pixels. You just don't notice it as much. Well, okay. And the other thing is, actually, by the time the font is scaled down to this, I can imagine it's using a bitmap anyway. So I can get myself like a nicer font, nicer resolution, but it's probably going to end up looking the same. So my options, like for the buttons, in terms of the way they look, having these, you know, outlines, I can draw them a different way. I can, I say draw them a different way, what do I really mean? If I make a new skin, I can experiment just with drawing to integers for starters. I mean, maybe that's just like what happens if I do just make those things integers. It won't like me doing this. I say it won't like me doing this. It won't care. But it's adding a kind of big pile of work. To take the integer, well, maybe it is, maybe it's no big deal to. So I'm going to do this strange thing, which will affect every single and last of all, x equals the int of x, and y equals the int of y. And I can rem all that out and replace it with what was there before. First off, yeah, just running it as it was and just looking at it. I want to see. It still looks like this has been reduced to a pixel. I mean, maybe that's not surprising. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised by that. Okay, now take this down to 1 again. Telling me, you seriously telling me you're going to make a pixel disappear? I think you are. I think basically they're integers anyway. You're not. The pixels stay. What is the downside? What is the downside to me making integers? Is it speed? Because honestly it's making no difference. I am going to persevere with this plan. If I find out there's a downside to this somewhere down the line, I'll be so upset. But no, for now I'll do the same to InSkin, and I will have my complete little gadgets. And I like the way they look. Well, I don't like is not quite right, but I'm pleased. Okay, right, well, that's a plan then. And I hope it doesn't mind me doing this. I'll just copy all this and stick it down in sharpskin in because it's just its counterpart. And I'll make sure that sharpskin in is also a 1 pixel wide thing. I'll just run that to make sure it's okay. I hope it is okay with this. It's maybe taking the integer and discarding the floating, like the bit after the floating point. Maybe it's fine. Because if it is, I'm really pleased that that has apparently worked. And this has its tiny little highlight, which is what it should have. So now I will add the new font and I'll see if somehow it makes it a bit better. Before I do that, there's something else I wanted to do to try. My dog is barking. It's nearly time for me to end anyway. But there's a process here called generate defaults. And yeah, it makes up a bunch of these colors. And from this, all other things are drawn. My dog is barking. And my housemate is not stopping her. From this, all other things are drawn. And so, let me have a little look at something. I want a good color picker. Is there just a color picker? No. Not one handy anyway. Opening up GIMP for this purpose is... It's like I actually wish that my own recursor displayed floating point values for colors. It doesn't. It displays 0 to 255. I did that myself deliberately because it's much easier to set the colors with that information. But now what I want is something that makes it really easy for me to see what a color looks like without having to recompile. So GIMP it is going to be. realise that I can write my own app, which is just a colour picker. Or a colour, just a very, very simple colour gadget. As it is, here I am, loading up GIMP to look at this. What on earth is a good colour? You see, I was thinking maybe coming more like up here. .903, .854, .854. Maybe that's just, I should just go for that. Something much lighter. Yeah, okay, well, let's say it's almost, it's like just off white is what I'm aiming at here. So, yeah, I'll go like up to 9, and these ones were just below, and I will go 85 and 80. I'll leave the color base inactive. That, let's see, I shouldn't be so expectant that just changing that color is really going to be the thing that makes everything fine, but we'll see. We'll see. Well, yeah, it's not exactly a nice color. Don't know. I can't go full on white because, well, I can, but my highlights disappear. That's not the end of the world. This text has gotten really tiny and on the verge of not being very good. The highlights disappearing isn't the end of the world if the thing is completely white. It's just I do need some way of distinguishing, you know, making my colors, my buttons jump out from the backdrop. Let's, like, if I just look at here, there's nothing. Like, you know, I could also go along with that and just have words, and could have them change color as you move the, you know, they already do that. But I like buttons. I can place little outlines around them, I guess. That might be what I end up doing. I could make the outlines around all the buttons dark just now, actually. Maybe I should just do that and see how it would look. In fact, that is what I'll do. And that is just a little bit not quite right. I think it needs to be more blue, and maybe it just needs to be more like that. And I will just pop into skins, and here I do, am I in out? I'm in skin. I want to be in out skin. Man, I draw these buttons far too complicated. I get, what? I use the main color and I do a bunch of stuff to it. Temporary color, set, C main, 1.5, 1.2, no, 0.7 and 0.4. So these are just colors I set up. When it gets the color set here, it looks inside it and gets the main color in the color set and uses it to derive the other colors. It's an absolute rigmarole. And then I use the IC1, 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 IC1. Different color on top, sides. It's obscene. So I think what IC5 is the only one that is main call. So that is the main face of it. It's the one I draw last, 2 triangles. So I basically want to set everything else, all this stuff. I can just say temp call set C main 0.6, say. That's so it sets it to be the same as the color C main, but scaled down to 0.6 of whatever it was. And I say, I should have put it after that one. I say IC1 equals temp call AV, IC2 equals temp call AV, IC3 equals temp call AV, and IC4 equals temp call AV. I could have left that line. In fact, I will. No, I won't. Equals temp call AV. I will just take it and move it back. Just so I remember that's part of the other way of doing it. So now I just have the colour and the slightly darker colour. I've saved myself a bit of time to make up for having to rid myself of those floating point sections. I am going to have to stop soon. I'm just toying with this now. Next time I'm going to get I'm going to explore putting the new font in. It will mean quite a few changes doing that, but that's okay. Right, well, okay. So, how about that? The thing that's most annoying about it is that is the double width at the edges of the gadgets. That's really interestingly annoying because, well, it's not like it's the end of the world. The thing that's annoying about it is that getting rid of it means making every gadget overlap, which isn't the end of the world at all, really. But it also does mean basically altering all code. And I actually think I'm not willing to do that. I think I'm not willing to do it. I think that maybe the alternative is to actually just tone down. These are not as dark as the dark parts of the darkness were before. Like the shaded parts the gadgets were before. I think that I will take this bit. See if I remember this right. 1 and 1. I think that's top. 3, 3, 4. Oh man, I do this in such a strange way. 2, 2, 4, 4, 3, 1, 1, 3, 3, 4, 4, 2, 2. I wish it was easier for me to decipher which of these is which, and it's just from bloody looking at this. But what I really need is 4. God damn it. 4 and like 0. Oh God, 1 and 4. No, I don't. That's a very wrong thing to say. I'm trying to figure out which is the, like, 4, 4. Which one has no 4s in it? It's this one. So there's 5. It would be so much easier if my mouse wheel wasn't just tricking me with its movements. This is the face of it. This one was xy to x2y2 to y4. 1, 2, 3, 3, y4. Okay, y4, y plus y height, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I think that 1 and 2 should be bright and 3 and 4 should be dark. God. Like, I'm not even really sure about that. Say 1.4 and make that actually 1.8. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. 1.4. so it's much more... Oh god, we'll see. I wish I'd just guessed that rather than trying to figure it out, because I bet I've got it wrong. This has now gone on long enough of me just footering with the GUI. But yeah, okay, I am much more pleased with that now that it's more subtle, like the actual shading. I'll maybe make it a bit more extreme than it is, but fine. Yeah, it probably does need to be a bit more. Does it? The inactive needs to be well sorted. Where am I? GUI classes. Inactive. And I need... Okay, that takes base inactive. Text inactive. It also uses base inactive and just darkens a bit. So inactive needs to be not as dark as it is because it's eye-catchingly dark. It just needs to be a bit darker, and it needs to be something like, I don't know, 7, 6, 6, or maybe even 7.5, 6 and 7, and 6.5, or 7. What am I setting this to? Yeah, really pretty bright. Can't really decide what would... I wonder if it still actually maybe looks too red. I'm basically going to stop really in about a minute. Well, I think that'll do for now. The font looks like... oh yeah, and these are inactive, sorry, and they look okay. I can also, if I go save, that's what the rest of the inactive things look like. And it's alright. I need to change that gadget so that the inactive text goes to this colour. But that's fine. That is a parent directory gadget, if you can believe it. Okay, hang on a sec. Oh no, it's alright. Okay. I will be making an attempt to fix the font.